I love strings libraries. That's why during my still young composer journey I've already accumulated several of them. No section of the orchestra pulls on my heartstrings more than the violins, violas, celli and double basses, especially when playing these beautiful and emotional legato lines. Now one more library has found its way into my arsenal. Performance Samples Vista, a larger-than-life chamber strings orchestra with a romantic and lively tone. What does Vista bring to the table that my other libraries don't? I want to illustrate this with a medical metaphor. Strings libraries are a bit like stem cells to me. There are multipotential stem cells that are not differentiated yet and can become and achieve pretty much everything. And there are specialized stem cells. They can do specific tasks extremely well. However, they lack some general skills. Bringing this into the context of orchestral composing, I'd place Vista somewhere around here. The T lymphocytes of strings libraries. Let me explain. Looking at this diagram of stem cells with undifferentiated all-rounders at the top, then generalists for one area of work, and finally specialists for further areas of work, I'd place, for example, Stressov sampling's Afflatus at the place of the multipotential stem cell that can become almost everything. Due to Afflatus' thematic approach, there are literally endless possibilities to use this library. Solo instruments, a huge amount of ensembles for different atmospheres, ethnic strings, integrated choir patches, and so much more. Going one step further down the differentiation, you will often find libraries catering to either the modern and processed sound for the cinematic and maybe trailer territory, and the more classical, unprocessed sound. In these fields there are generalists with many articulations, mic positions and a great degree of variety, and specialists that serve one specific purpose and execute it extremely well. The specialists, however, are limited in their functionality and usually don't replace the generalists in everyday tasks. A generalist for the modern cinematic sounds could be, for example, Audio Imperia's Area. Its upfront, processed sound and large variety of articulations make it a great tool for many situations. A generalist for the more classically oriented sound could, for example, be Orchestral Tool's Berlin Strings, with sheer endless amounts of articulations and a very natural and realistic sound. An epic specialist could be Trailer Strings, with a huge section size of up to 12 double basses. You reach a sound that you wouldn't achieve with a generalist, but are also more or less limited towards one specific use case: huge and loud trailer sound. As said before, Vista would be probably placed somewhere around here, a specialist within the more traditional sounds of a strings orchestra. What makes Vista a specialist and not a generalist, or even a multipotential library? There are several reasons, but the elephant in the room is that it has only legato and long sustained articulations. You can't write ostinato patterns, staccatos, or other short accents with it. It's specialized to deliver slurred legato lines with a lively and vivid performance. And Vista achieves that sound spectacularly well. This is not only due to the programming, but already starts at the way the strings players have been recorded, and this identity is therefore deeply rooted in the DNA of the instrument. Is Vista a great first strings library? Probably not, due to its limitation in use cases. But for its specific use case, is it still a library that beginners can use easily? Let's find out. To me, a good beginner library needs to be simple. It should be playable, timing consistent, have small amount of patches, and have limited amount of settings that can distract people who are not as familiar with all the intricacies of modern sample techniques. Is Vista playable? Absolutely. You can load a patch and immediately start playing to enjoy the smooth and vivid sound of those sweet legato transitions. One thing that makes it so playable is the timing consistency. No matter the velocity, dynamic CC, or expression CC of your input, the timing of the notes will be the same. This is because there is a fixed sample delay of about 140 milliseconds throughout all patches, and also throughout most of Performance Sample's instruments. Simply set your DAW to a negative track delay of 140 milliseconds, and you can quantize your string lines to the grid, humanize it a bit, and are basically good to go. Other libraries use multiple legato timings, where you need to be careful which notes you assign to a fast legato speed or a slow legato speed, and then you'll have to adjust the timing of each of these notes individually. One example of this technique is Cinematic Studio Strings. Vista keeps it simple here. Does it have a small number of patches? Again, absolutely. Only one patch for each section. Violins, violas, celli, double basses, plus 3 bonus patches. An ensemble patch, a triple F overlay for louder and expressive passages, and a harp patch. What about the settings? There's not too much you have to adjust. 2 mic positions, Generalist library Berlin Strings has 4, volume, panning, a legato switch, and some control over the attack threshold. And that's it. A couple of further options are almost hidden on a second page and don't distract from the purpose of this library, creating beautiful music. All of the items from my Simplicity shopping list are ticked. I think this library is very intuitive and easy to use, and totally suited for beginners. And of course, everyone else looking for a romantic specialist library. There is one more thing that makes this a specialist library to me, and that is a common theme throughout many of Performance Sample's products: noise. The samples are recorded from real performances. That's why there are imperfections in the sound, like bow scrapes and audible bow changes. Personally, I embrace these imperfections. They lead to a more lively and convincing sound. I learned from Alex Pfeffer that many of us would be surprised what our compositions sound like when performed by a real orchestra. Dozens of humans are breathing, moving, and playing their instruments. Some composers even put recordings of quiet concert halls underneath their samples to have a bit of that natural ambience in their artificial track. But I can also understand people who want the clean and perfect sound, giving them more control over each phrase they record. Those people would be a bit disappointed by Vista, I think. It's a matter of taste, really. I wrote a little demo piece for Vista. My idea was to start as close and intimate as possible, then widen the sound up a little bit until reaching the climax with the full strings orchestra. For that, I used 2 solo violins in the beginning. These are not part of Vista, but are Performance Sample's affordable Solos of the C Violin B. They're like a solo violin version of Vista with the same level of simplicity. I then widen it up a little bit by increasing the section size. I double the solo violins with Vista's close-mic'd violins and add close-mic'd cello to the composition. Finally, the entire string section plays together with the Decca mics to demonstrate the almost overwhelming expressiveness and movement in the sound of these strings. In the full demo, I double the strings with woodwinds to give the climax a bit more depth. Let's hear it. The sound of these strings is nothing but amazing to me. I am sure many people can create better mock-ups than I do, but this already gives me the feeling that I'm conducting a living and breathing orchestra. I love strings libraries, and this feeling makes Performance Sample's Vista well worth its price for me. It's not just the romantic and expressive sound, but also the simplicity in its approach that will make me use this trusty specialist library with no hesitation whenever I need it. You can pick up Vista at the Performance Samples website for $339 US. If this video was helpful to you, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will post more updates on my composer journey and everything that crosses me on the way there. See you soon!